Hello, sports fans, and welcome to the Super Bowl weekend eve. I am Brian Kress, the awesome voice. This is Any Given Sunday on KUAW. Across from me is my brother with another mother, Coach 24, Darwin Penny. How are you doing this evening, sir?
This is a great weekend. We're looking forward to Super Bowl 58, Super Bowl Derek Thomas, and looking forward to a great show.
Absolutely. And running the show behind the scenes, Mr. DJ Scatter, George Walker. How are you doing, Mr. Walker?
Just having a great evening. It's a great evening out there. The weather's good, and I'm feeling fine.
Yeah, absolutely, man. This is awesome. And I'm telling you what, I am looking forward to the Super Bowl, being that the Chiefs are in Vegas playing for the championship is even better. But on Monday, you would think that nothing could beat what's going on with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Super Bowl and Vegas and everything. But the Kansas City Royals did that.
Absolutely. Monday was a great day in not Kansas City Royals, but I think Kansas City sports history to see the long-term signing of Bobby Witt Jr. To a contract that will effectively keep him in Kansas City his entire career. I know there are some loopholes in there, that he has as a player, but at the end of the day, Bobby wants to be here. The Royals want him to be here. The fans want him to be here, and we were able to get that done.
Absolutely. Being a longtime Royals fan, I have seen players come left and right. You would think that they would stay only to be traded, signed in the free agency. Carlos Beltran, Jermaine Dye, Johnny Damon, to name just a few. This, to me, is an amazing event. And not only that, it kind of matches the Royals player with Patrick Mahomes. You've got arguably the best player in Patrick Mahomes. Bobby Witt Jr. is one of the top 5 players, and he is only 23 years old. And the fact that we've got 2 of the top players in baseball and football, that just speaks volumes.
Absolutely. Bobby Witt is what you would call, in the scouting world, a generational talent at what he's able to do, the combination of power and speed. And then, believe it or not, last year there were concerns going into the season on whether he truly was an everyday shortstop or would he move over to third or possibly even second. As we know, his body will continue to fill out as he matures. But he played Gold Glove defense last year on top of being a first Royals 30-30 guy and came close to being a 30-50, right? Only 3 other guys have had the type of first 2 years of impact with power and speed like Bobby Witt has done. Eric Davis was the guy that really comes to mind because his second full season, he had 37 home runs and 50 stolen bases. But his first year, he had 80 stolen bases, right? And so Bobby hadn't had quite as many stolen bases, but, he's put up similar power numbers. And we feel like he's only going to get better. He's only started to scratch the surface. If you look at his breakdown of 2023 and how much better he was the second half of the season as opposed to the first half of the season, where it seemed like overnight the light went off and he was just unbelievable. But on beyond his physical prowess is who he is as a person. I can remember my first time meeting Bobby in 2019 after we had drafted and signed him, and just watching him get along with everybody. Watching Bobby trying to speak Spanish with the Latin players, hanging out in what I affectionately called the neighborhood with a lot of the African American players at instructional league, and then just every day he goes out there with a workmanlike approach to the game. You see him run down the line on every ball that he puts in play. I think StatTrack had him as the second fastest per square inch running the bases in the league, and so he's giving the fans what they pay their hard-earned money to go see each and every day. No off-field problems. Again, just a great family, and so what he brings to the table off the field and what he could bring to the Kansas City community, as I believe he will develop a philanthropic purpose as he continues to move along. It's just going to be a great ride to watch how this young man evolves.
Absolutely. Now, saying this, last week on our show, we were talking about the Hall of Fame and guys that were in. Did you have an idea of what was going on with this?
I did have an idea from the standpoint of conversations had started probably back in September with just exchanging what was important to Bobby, what was important to the organization, how could the organization help him meet his goals at what he wanted to do. And the one thing he talked about in his press conferences, he wanted to be a part of a winner. He wants to bring that parade back to Kansas City. And so then it was incumbent upon us, the Royals, to try to find a way that he could be extremely satisfied and we as an organization could become extremely satisfied with the talent that we have here, especially somebody that we have drafted and developed and watched him blossom right before our eyes. And so, but I had no idea that we had gotten so close, right? And that, Monday I was reading the news and hearing things, and then wasn't long after that received an email saying that, there had been common ground reached on the numbers, and now it was about putting pen to paper.
So with this, what does it do for the Royals? What is their mindset for the Royals?
The mindset now is to put a team around Bobby, and let's just be honest. That's not saying Bobby is the only player, but Bobby will be the focal point. He is the franchise player, right? We've had players that have been like that in the past, and so he's not the first franchise player, but he is the guy now that you say, okay, how do we put a team around his unique talents and skill that gives him the best chance to now start to talk about those championship goals that he has, and to put a competitive team out there. Obviously, we've been aggressive in this offseason free agent market to try to send that message just to him and the rest of the players, is like, we're not waiting to rebuild. We want to reload and get out there now and make something happen. We don't want to lose 100 games again, but go out here and be competitive. Baseball has always had worst to first stories. We weren't the worst team last year. We were close. But we've seen it in the past, right? We watched from 1990 to 91, we watched the Twins go from worst to first. We watched the Braves go from being this bottom cellar dweller to 14 straight division titles. We saw that, and they were homegrown guys. They were not guys that were a lot of free agents, probably with the exception of Greg Maddux. And so what they said then is we have a pretty good pitching staff in Smoltz and Glavine and Steve Avery. Let's see if we can put another workhorse with them. And he, being a free agent at that time, chose Atlanta, and it gave him the best chance to win. And so I think that's going to be similar. Is we've got some guys we can build around. We've got Bobby. We've got Michael Garcia. I think those guys are going to be the two key cornerstone guys to build a franchise around over the next decade. You also have the veteran leadership and championship experience. Salvi's still our guy, that's been around since, when we were in the World Series in 14 and 15. And so you've got that, and then you start adding pieces. And we've now starting to put together a mix of youth and veteran leadership, guys who won a World Series last year, in the bullpen. And so it's going to be interesting. I think what it does is it sends a message to everybody is that the Royals are in it to win it, and not just to be an also ran. Now that doesn't mean just because you got Bobby locked up that you still got to go play the games. You still got to go out and compete, but that's got to be a weight off of him. That's a weight off the organization, and Bobby feels like he's been compensated fairly, and now he can just go play. He's got long-term security. He's going to be married here shortly, and as he starts his family, he can think about raising his family and his kids here in Kansas City.
Absolutely. So, saying this, the Royals and the Chiefs have never had championship teams together. It's usually been the Royals were in the 70s and the 80s, and then the Chiefs in the 90s, the Royals for a second in the 2000s, and then in the 2014, 2015, it was Royals, and then now it's back to the Chiefs. How long do you think it could take before we have the Chiefs and the Royals as a possible championship team?
Well, here's what we know: that as long as 15 is the quarterback for the Chiefs, they're going to have a shot. So we're looking at least another decade of the Chiefs being really, really competitive, right? I think we're probably still at least 2 years away from being really, really competitive as the Royals. We've got to build our minor league system back up. We've got to be really good in the draft because, like you say, we don't go out and get those big free agents. We can't go get Ohtani. We can't go get guys like that. And so what we've got to do is find guys that are hungry in the free agent market, guys who may have a little bit of chip on their shoulder because, I wanted the big money, but, this is at least fair money, for a shorter term. Everybody would love to have a decade-long contract, but that's not reality. And so give these guys with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder to come to Kansas City. See, Kansas City is a great place to live, a great place to play. You're not dealing with the media like New York or Chicago or in L.A. And then find that secret sauce that allows us to play well, right? We saw that in 13 as the Royals, the second half of the season, started to come together. You had a group of guys that had been successful at the minor league level. They had won some minor league championships that all got to the big leagues around the same time. And so can you be able to do that now? We've got some guys that have won some minor league championships that are in our stable, and hopefully we can stay healthy. We've upgraded on paper our pitching staff, and to be able to go out and play good competitive baseball. But there are people that you have to try to leapfrog. I mean, right now, quiet is kept. The Orioles are looking really good, right? They got their feet wet in the playoffs last year, and man, they've got a bunch of guys kind of long-term locked up. They got young stars that are on the way. Right now, they have listed as the best minor league franchise, and so they could be a force in the American League. Okay, within our own division, I think that is a plus for us, is that we can reverse it really quick. The Twins are right now on top, but I think if we go out and get off to a good start and not play poor baseball in April and in May like we have for several years now, then we'll have a chance. And so that's the goal, is when we go to the All-Star break, are we still in contention, right? Are we still in contention and we can fight and we've got some ground that either we're leading or we can make up? And we need somebody not named Bobby Witt Jr. to have a career year.
Absolutely. Garcia is the one guy that I can see and have it formidable at third base and shortstop. That's pretty good. That would be a boost. Now, saying this, you're saying that we have to build up the farm system and everything. And at one time, the Royals did have the best farm system. Do you know how long it could take before we can get back to having one of the best farm systems in the league?
Well, I think that could be, 2 to 3 years, but a lot of it is going to depend on the guys that we were able to draft last year in 2023 and the guys that we drafted in 2022. How well do they go out and play? Okay, how well do they go out and play? Because the people who make these polls and do this writing, they're out there looking at how successful these guys are being in the minor leagues. Are they able to put together some competitive teams that go out and compete for championships? And that's always the challenge at the minor league level. Are you there to develop, or are you there to win? And I think there has to be a blend, right? I don't think guys learn how to win at the major league level. I think the guys learn how to win at the minor league level. And so, but ultimately you want them to be major league ready and give them an opportunity to do that. But I think we're going to have another successful draft in 24, and then probably another successful draft in 25 to put ourselves back in that position. Because when you go back and say in 13 we had one of the best minor league systems, well, it was because of the drafts in 08, 09, 10 at what they were able to put together with a Hosmer and a Mustakas and guys that were around them. And so our 2010 first rounder had one of the biggest hits in Royals history in Christian Colon, in that playoff game. So can you put that together over 3 years where the guys that are selected at the top of the draft, they go out and they perform well, and they perform well early, right? It doesn't take them 4 or 5 years to figure it out, just like it did in Bobby,
Right.
And the thing that's so remarkable about Bobby is Bobby's first season, full season in the minors, he couldn't play
Because of COVID.
because of COVID. So he was at the alternate site that whole what would have been his first full year in the minors, 2020. So we drafted him in 2019. Then we go out in 2021 and we put him on the fast track. We sent him to Double-A, and he goes to Double-A and he hits about 14 or 15 home runs at Double-A. Then we jump him up to Triple-A and he hits another 14 or 15. He winds up almost having a 30-30 year in Double-A, where he's like between Double-A and Triple-A, where he's like 29 and 33, and then here we are, opening day 2022, and we've got this young puppy in the lineup without being that guy. But here's what I know in my years in the game: those guys that are going to be those dudes, they're those dudes early.
Absolutely. Now, saying this, how effective does it allow other players to come and want to play for the Royals? So, like, I know the last few years, a lot of players didn't want to play for the Royals. They wanted to play for more of a winner. But with this, how does it affect other players and their mentality to want to come play for the Royals?
Well, I think one message has been sent is that the Royals are going to be fair, right? That they are committed to trying to win when they're going to take their best player and lock him up. And then we were able to be creative and be fair market price for some of the other free agents that we picked up, but also that we are still committed to developing within our own system. Kansas City's a great place. It's a first-class city. I think it's a true testament to our ownership and Mr. Sherman and his commitment, not only to the organization but to the city as a whole. And then I think J.J. Piccolo now has fully his reins on the organization, that it's taking on more of his characteristics, and we know, and we have evidence, and we have record, and we have a World Series trophy and rings to show us what Dayton Moore did. But I think at this time now, it's fully JJ's and his ability to communicate with these players and his staff around him to say Kansas City is a viable destination for you, but what type of player? And I think the biggest thing for us is then creating an identity as to how we're going to play the game. One thing that you remember back in 13, 14, and 15, the Royals started to identify themselves in line with what you used to see with old school National League baseball. Putting pressure on the defense through running the stolen base, taking the extra base first to third, playing outstanding defense, and getting good timely pitching when you need it, and a reliable bullpen. And I think those are still formulas to success based on our current ballpark that says we've got to be good defensively, especially in the outfield, where the outfield in Kansas City is the largest per square foot in the Major League Baseball. So our guys have to cover a little bit more ground. And so I think they have sent a message out that, hey, why not try Kansas City, right? It gives you an opportunity to grow as a player. But if you're a guy in need of a little bit of a bounce back, we'll take you too.
Absolutely. So, saying this, what do you think are chances, or not, I shouldn't say my chances, what are the Royals' chances of winning the Central Division?
I think it's more than a fair shot. We've got some questions, that need to be answered. Can Vinny Pasquantino be who we think he can be? He's shown unbelievable patience and power at the minor league level, but unfortunately was hurt last year. And so with a healthy Vinny over at first base, will he be able to do that? Will Michael Massey develop into the offensive stalwart that we think he can be at second base and still give us first-class defense? We know what we're going to get in Bobby. We believe we know what we're going to get in Michael. Just for reference, Michael played winter ball this year, and he was one of the best hitters in winter ball this year. I mean, he was outstanding, hitting close to 400 in winter ball, and really showing some signs of growth and maturity at the plate. Who's going to win the left field battle? What do you do with MJ Melendez? Is he going to be a stalwart on the corner? Will we be able to find that power that he showed at the minor league level when he led all the minor leaguers in 2021, in home runs, when he hit over 40 home runs? Will we be able to see that center field? Who's going to take center field by the horns, right? We've seen some guys. We've tried it, some guys out there. Drew Waters, among others. Is he going to finally establish himself as a prototype big leaguer, whether he's playing center field or one of the corners? And then does the rotation finally come together? Brady Singer, okay, we drafted you in the first round for a reason. Is he going to step up and be that guy? Now a little bit of the pressure is off for him for having to be the number one. Can he settle into a number 3 or 2 or 4 role in the middle of the rotation? Cole Reagans, does he come back and give us more of what we saw the last 2 months after the trade deadline, and we picked him up and he goes 6-1 down the stretch for us? Is he really a bona fide number 1, or is he a 2 or somewhere in the middle? And then these guys that we paid as offseason acquisitions, okay, not only are you going to come and play well, but are you going to be an influence in the locker room? I think those are the things that we've got a lot of answers, a lot of questions. Will we get those answers on the field? And but I think all things are possible, especially with knowing that our franchise guy is locked up for a long time. We extended Salvi a couple of years ago, and so we know he's still going to be around. I think he is excited. We saw the message that he sent via social media to Bobby. He's excited for Bobby just as much as he was when Bobby got selected to be on the team out of spring training. He was the one to be able to tell Bobby, you're going to the big leagues. And so I think all of those things factor in. We also have to look at our manager. This will be his second full season as a manager in the big leagues, knowing to make those right moves, or when to prod his staff and say, hey, I'm thinking this, and can we put it all together? But at the end of the day, man, I still think that we're probably a year away. But who knows? If you get off to a good start, there's an opportunity for us to at least maybe get a wild card spot and to keep ourselves relevant throughout the year. And but everybody goes into spring training with them same aspirations.
Absolutely. And I get jerseys. Anybody who knows me knows I have a lot of jerseys. So now I have Bobby Witt. And usually when you get a jersey, it ends up going somewhere else. So then it's kind of a leftover type jersey. This is going to be nice that I can wear this jersey just like I would wear a George Brett jersey. Even a Bo Jackson jersey, because, up until he got injured, I think he would have been a Royal for his lifetime. And we have been clamoring for that guy. We've been trying to grasp for him, and we could never get that guy. Every time we seem to get that guy, he seems to let go. That's why a lot of people love Salvi. My mom especially. That's her Salvi. That's nobody else's. That's my mom's.
Absolutely.
But when you have a player, but now he is on the other end of 30 years old. So it's nice to get a young, youthful player, and not just a player, a great player.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that it can, it can transcend, it can build, and make something special in Kansas City is really awesome. And with that, we are going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we are going to talk Super Bowl. And, if it wasn't for this, we probably wouldn't have been talking the Royals much. But I am really glad that it was that important enough that we could end up talking the Royals. And we talked about it for the whole half hour. So I am very proud. But with that, we've got the really important game going on, and that is Super Bowl Derek Thomas. And with that, I am Brian Kress, the Awesome Voice with Coach 24 and DJ Scatter. We will be back on any given Sunday on KUAW. All right, we're back with Any Given Sunday on KUAW. Now, the phone number is 816-599-6893 if you want to call in, if you want to speak your piece, or even ask us questions, because I know we always have the answers and we can give it to you. So, obviously, I had my Royals jersey on. I took it off, and I've got my Derek Thomas 58 jersey. For Super Bowl Derek Thomas, Super Bowl 58. And the Chiefs are the home team. They are wearing the red jerseys. And San Francisco is already whining about the field. Is it getting to the point where you have to expect perfection in everything, and if you don't get perfection, you're just going to sit and whine about it?
I think it becomes more of a safety issue than anything else, because they planted their practice field over a turf field. And so how do you know that that sod has actually taken root? And I think that's where the biggest challenge is how can you effectively go out and practice when in your mind it is could potentially be hazardous. As somebody who played a game on a newly laid sod back in 1991, when I was playing for the Carolina Mudcats, literally the day of our first game there, they were laying sod. And I remember our manager saying to the owner, I can't put my players, we're talking about guys who could potentially have $1 million contracts one day, even though they're minor leaguers now, and we have a sod that has not taken root. How am I supposed to put my guys out there? And there was a long conversation to the front office in Pittsburgh. And, the owner of the minor league team is saying, I got 5,000 excited fans. We haven't had baseball here in this county in, 40 years. And, people have paid money. They're ready to go. And so it became a source of contention. And basically he had to pony up and says, if anybody gets hurt, I'll be responsible for it. Now, fortunately, nobody did. And so I don't want to I just think there's two sides to this story, because when you go into a game this big, you want to make sure that the accommodations, everything that leads up to the game is equal, right?
Absolutely.
That's why they do who's got this time for the press, everything else. They try to make it equal down there. And so there's a little bit of him hawing that says, well, they're not practicing on a field that's the same as what we're practicing on. And, could that give an advantage? Well, most of us say no, because what you've put in up to this point, is who you are, right? I don't think anything new is going to dramatically happen in the last 2 weeks since the AFC playoff game. And so, but it is one of those things that you're saying we want to make sure that it's equal on both sides.
Got it. So, so San Francisco, a lot of people outside of Kansas City think San Francisco is going to win. Now, Kyle Shanahan has been kind of like Andy Reid. He has been successful. He has winning teams. He's even been to the Super Bowl once as a offensive coordinator, and now twice, or this will be his second Super Bowl appearance. And yet he hasn't been able to win one. In fact, he was 0-30 since 2017 for San Francisco when they are down in the fourth quarter. And the Green Bay game and the Detroit game, both times they were down at halftime, and they did come back to win. Saying that, do you see more fans wanting San Francisco to win, or is it more of they don't want Kansas City to win because they're tired of them winning? They're tired of being so-called the Patriots.
Right. And for me, they're not at that extended period of time of success, even though the Patriots had a 10-year window there where they did not win a Super Bowl. But it was the fact that, like the Chiefs, they were basically in the AFC championship game every year. You knew you had to go through them to get to the championship. And so I don't really see, from my advantage, people downing the Chiefs. I think most people have been surprised because we did not see our normal Kansas City Chiefs for the majority of the season this year, right? We've seen them be more of the Kansas City Chiefs the last 2 weeks. But more than anything else, we've seen a team that has been led as much by their defense as they have their offense, right? And so I don't think it's gotten to that point yet, but I think that has been more of the pushback, and then people like to associate themselves with certain people. There were a lot of people who are not anti-Mahomes, but were pro-Lamar. Lamar has gone through a lot to elevate himself to a level of superstar status, going against the grain, being who he is as a quarterback, not having a traditional agent to negotiate his contracts, what he had to go through to get that contract. And I think a lot of people kind of rallied around that. Like, this guy almost put himself, in harm's way, and he was hurt toward the end of last year, and he he didn't get a contract. You know, he had to beg for. People look at it like he had to beg for a contract. No, he didn't have to beg for a contract. They just had to get it into a place where they felt comfortable on the amount of guaranteed money, and especially when Deshaun Watson had reset the market. And so Lamar is a very likable young man and things like that. And so I always say you got about a 4 or 5 year window, right, to win, and everybody still like you. You get past that, then it's like, okay, we want to see somebody else, right? And that's just our nature in fandom. And but I don't think there is a nationwide dislike of the Chiefs. The 49ers, I think there are probably some people who have jumped on their bandwagon because, again, they've knocked on the door for about a 4 year window here, even going back to the Kaepernick days, and they haven't been able to cash in. And so we love the lovable loser, right? Just like probably by that fourth Super Bowl, everybody was like, man, can Buffalo just win one, right? We're tired of seeing them come up here and get progressively worse each year that they had gone to the Super Bowl. And so in Super Bowl 28, when they go in, you know, leading at the halftime against the Cowboys, they thought, well, maybe they finally will win one, and then Emmitt Smith took over. And so I think there's a lot of sentimental around that. I think there's some people who probably jump on the 49ers because they got Mr. Irrelevant at quarterback, right? They got Brock Purdy, the last guy in the draft, right? You know, he wins the Super Bowl, Disney will make a movie about it. You know,
right?
It's just that type of thing versus the guy who's good year in and year out, like a Patrick Mahomes was or like a Tom Brady was. You know, that sustained amount of consistency, for whatever reason, gets on people's nerves.
Yep, absolutely. Now, saying this, as Brock Purdy wins the Super Bowl, he will join Bart Starr, Johnny Unitas, Roger Staubach, Brad Johnson, and Kurt Warner as quarterbacks that were drafted in the 7th round or later, or even undrafted, just like Kurt Warner, to win a Super Bowl. And that is a pretty high achievement. Now, saying this, they think, you know, Brock Purdy is kind of similar to Tom Brady because Tom Brady was drafted. Oh, he was drafted in the 6th round. 6th round. So he didn't quite make that. But yet, at the same time, nobody expected Tom Brady to totally dominate. He didn't dominate in college, but all of a sudden he started dominating in the NFL, and he really didn't dominate. He had a team behind him because he had a phenomenal defense and a good running game and good players. Well, Brock Purdy is the same thing. Even though by week 15 he was considered the favorite to win MVP, and I never believed that he was going to win the MVP because Deebo Samuel was could have won it, or Christian McCaffrey. But because it's a quarterback league, a quarterback usually wins this.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that you have to look at when you look at Brock Purdy and Tom Brady for that matter. They were guys who didn't have elite talent, and when you don't have elite talent, they always try to put somebody in front of you. Anybody who played with Tom Brady at Michigan will say he was the guy. He was the guy, but they always had more invested into somebody else, right? They had money or an investment into Drew Henson because they had talked Drew Henson out of going playing professional baseball. There was Greasy's kid. There was always somebody to put in it, but whenever they needed it, Brady was out there. And I've listened to Charles Woodson talk about it, who they were teammates at Michigan, and he said, we always knew he was the guy that could win games for us. He just didn't look the prettiest, right? And then the first part of his career, he stepped into a team that was pretty good defensively and could manage the game. I could still hear John Madden when the Rams tied the game up and saying they ought to just take a knee and go into overtime. And what does Bill Belichick do? He lets Brady go out there and make a play, and Vinatieri makes an unbelievable kick, and they're Super Bowl champions. But the second half of his career, and like I said, he basically had 2 Hall of Fame careers, he had to carry the Patriots a lot more because he didn't have great receivers. There's no Hall of Fame receivers except the year and a half that he played with Randy Moss, and that year that he had him for a full season. What did he do? He went out and set a new record on touchdown passes, where he had 50 touchdown passes in that year, and Randy Moss also set a record. And so I think Brock Purdy is going to always find himself in that, because you weren't a first-round pick, then there's something inherently flawed about you, and so therefore you can't be listed as the best player on your team when people will pull out stats and say, well, they only win at a 48% rate when Debo's out. Well, okay, that may change over time, but he is where he is right now. He didn't come out of a blue blood college. He came out of Iowa State, right? So people look at him as that there's something inherently wrong. But if you sit there and you analyze the tape, what throw does he not make?
Right.
He makes the throws. He can move out of the pocket. We saw him the last couple of weeks where, he had to make some plays with his feet. He was able to do that. But because he's suffering because of Kyle Shanahan's one with no matter who he's had at quarterback.
Right.
Right. If all the quarterbacks before him had lost, then they would say, oh, man, Brock Purdy's the best thing, since sliced bread. Right. But we just got him late. Right. Some of these quarterbacks, as you mentioned, while they went late, well, there were some extenuating circumstances. Well, Roger Staubach was a Heisman Trophy winner, but because of his 6-year commitment to the Navy as a Naval Academy graduate, you're not going to have him for 6 years. So who would draft him in the first round?
Right.
And so Dallas allowed him to go as far as they could go and say, okay, we better take him now, but that's our guy. But they also had drafted Craig Morton as a first rounder.
Right.
And so and Meredith had just retired. So there are a lot of things that make those guys who they are. But I like it because those guys play with a chip on their shoulder. Tom Brady played for 20-plus years like he always had something to prove. I'm still that sixth-round guy that everybody passed on.
Right.
He kept his number in his head.
Right.
How many guys were drafted, before him, and then he put himself in a position to continue to get better. Belichick saw something because his rookie year they kept 4 quarterbacks on the roster, and teams usually don't do that. They keep 3.
Yep.
And the third one is usually inactive, and so they keep a 4th quarterback. They saw something,
right?
And what we found out is what he had was something that you could not measure. There was an intangible in him to be driven to be the best.
Right. As Mark Donovan says, they have more information on these players than we can ever dream of. We can look it up all day long and get all of our stats, and me with my stats. But they have more information, so obviously they had whatever they had and knew about Tom Brady, and that's why they got him, and that's why they drafted him and everything else. Now, saying this, the Chiefs, okay, so we got San Francisco and their offense. So in the 2 games that San Francisco played, they only scored 14 points in the first half, 7 points each game. They turned around and scored 44 points in the second half and held the opponents to 22 points and shut them down. Now they're going against Kansas City and a defense that has only given up 10 points in 3 games. Now, saying that, they've only scored 24 points in the second half, including 0 in the championship game against Baltimore. So the difference is, can Patrick Mahomes come up with offense to offset the defense? Do you think that the Chiefs' defense has to completely carry him? Because I feel that Patrick Mahomes, even though he's adjusted this year and adjusted very well, now in the regular season it may not look like it, but in the postseason they have done very well, with the exception of the second half of the Baltimore game. How much does Patrick Mahomes have to help the defense?
Well, I think he has to make sure that they maintain drives and not put the ball in harm's way. I think you saw some conservatism in the Chiefs' offense the last 2 weeks that we are not accustomed to make sure that they didn't put the ball in harm's way, and to say we have a lot more confidence in our defense than we once did, and where they would have to continue to keep the pedal to the metal. It was about, man, let's make the other team have to score every time they get the ball, and with our defense, we know that they're not going to score every time that they have the ball. And so I haven't seen some of those flash plays that I think will probably come out this weekend with Andy. I think he's kept some things close to vest because of what his defense has been able to do. And then I think there's a level of trust that Patrick is still seeking with his receivers to make some of those plays that we know he can make when he winds, parallel to the ground and letting the ball go when he's parallel to the ground. Some of those things I think now, as being a little bit older and wiser, and just said, let's live to play another play, because I have supreme confidence in my defense. And so I don't think the defense is going to have to carry them. I just think they're going to have to do their job at not allowing San Francisco to dictate the pace of the game. If Kansas City if the 49ers dictate the pace of the game, especially with McCaffrey in the running game, that could present a problem, because then that limits the number of touches that Patrick Mahomes actually gets the ball. And I think at that point he might be willing then to take some risks that he did earlier in the season, where he had a career high in turnovers. And so but I think the Chiefs still need to continue to put some challenges on Isaiah Pacheco, because San Francisco's norm is they run a lot of zone defense and not a lot of man-to-man. And so how do you run people out of that zone? You got to run the ball, right? And so they're committed to saying, you're not going to get deep on us. And so are you going to be willing, Mahomes, to stay patient and to take the nickel and dime pass, and then give Pacheco an opportunity to run?
Yep, absolutely. And Green Bay ran for 136 yards against them, and Detroit ran for 182 yards, though in the second half they seemed to let the foot off the rushing pedal, just like Baltimore did against Kansas City. So saying that, how much do you think that do you think that they have to run the ball virtually every play, every down? I know that they have to rely on it. I know that Pacheco has to be the key, because I don't feel that Patrick Mahomes alone can beat him like he has before. I think he has to rely on the rushing game, and then put in his plays, spotted plays, to make the San Francisco defense honest.
Yeah, I think he's going to put them in a position between Mahomes and Andy Reid that they have to cover Kelsey one-on-one, and that's kind of been who they are as a team. They play a quarters zone behind it, and then like to match up one-on-one on the tight end. So can he get the ball to Kelsey and he have another big game like he did in the championship game? There's a thing that's called being committed to the run, and that was the thing that I think Baltimore decided that they weren't committed to the run, which is amazing because they had run the ball more than anybody else. The one thing we know about Shanahan's offense, they're going to stay committed to the run because they can get so creative in the run game. It's not all McCaffrey. Right. It is finding ways to get the ball in Debo's hands or Ayuk's hands to give them opportunities to make plays in space. And so their running game is really creative. And so can they get to the edge on the Chiefs? It's going to be interesting because they're going to have to run, I believe, out of formations that are not normally their formations that they run out of, because the Chiefs do more corner blitzes than anybody else in the league. And so San Francisco likes to run a lot of bunch sets with their wide receivers because they do find ways to get Debo the ball in the running game. And so many times they'll line him up close. And I think that's going to be a challenge for them to say, well, we're going to have to do this a little bit differently because the Chiefs like to bring so many corner blitzes. Let's get those corners to have to come from way outside and not being able to come off the edge. But if the Chiefs gamble in those situations, I think one block could put McCaffrey in the secondary, and certainly he can bump his head on the goalpost, and I think that's going to be very crucial.
Absolutely. So, the last 2 weeks, you have picked Buffalo, you have picked Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
What is your prediction, and what is the score of your prediction?
So everybody can say, well, if he picks against the Chiefs, they'll win. I'll pick the 49ers 31-28.
You think that's going to be a high-scoring game?
I think they're going to be low scoring until the second half when both teams will stop sparring like a boxing match and then really open up and allow some things to happen. I mean, it's four touchdowns and a field goal.
Yeah.
Right, and I think both of these teams are capable of making big plays that would do that. I don't think it's going to be a 17-10 game like with the Ravens either. And so they're both teams have the ability to make explosives, and I think those explosives may come out. I just feel like Andy's going to open up the playbook this week and give the Chiefs an opportunity to make some of those big plays that I think they've held close to vest over the last few weeks.
Absolutely. So you pick San Francisco. Now I'm going to say that I've gone 6-0 since the Super Wild Card weekend. I've been nailing them and getting it right, and with that, I think the Chiefs will win their third Super Bowl in 5 years, and I've got 26-21. I think they're going to struggle in scoring touchdowns. They'll get a couple of them, but I think they will have to rely on the foot of Harrison Butker, and they have shut down everybody this year. It's not like all the other teams, like Baltimore, like Cleveland, like San Francisco, that have given up a lot of points. They have only given up 27 points. That's the most they've given up this year. I do not see them scoring that. I will say this, that if San Francisco scores more than 27 points, then I think they will win. But I believe in the defense, and I've got a 26-21 Kansas City Chiefs victory. Now, saying this real quick, if Kansas City wins, you can consider them a dynasty.
Yes.
If they lose, would you still consider them a dynasty?
I'd consider them a finesty.
A finesty?
Yeah, fake dynasty.
Fake dynasty. Okay.
So they'll be a finesty. I don't think you can be a dynasty until you win back to back.
Okay.
I'm gonna hold that position. Every team that we've called a dynasty had that. Right? The Packers had it. The Dolphins had it. The Steelers had it. The Niners had it. The Cowboys had it. Right? The Patriots had it. So the interesting part is we haven't had a back-to-back Super Bowl champion since 03-04.
Right.
So we're probably due.
Right.
We're probably due, and this is the team to do that. But we've seen teams have sustained greatness, and that's what I would call it, greatness, not a dynasty if they were to lose that, because that's what it was with my beloved Cowboys from 1965 until 1986, when they had 20 consecutive winning seasons, but only two Super Bowl wins in that, even though they had gone to the Super Bowl 5 times at that time. And then in the first 30 years of the Super Bowl, they had played in the conference championship 14 times.
Right.
But they were not a dynasty until the triplets came along, because the Steelers were always 4 points better.
Yep.
Right. The Raiders under Madden, really, really good for a long time. Okay. But only one Super Bowl in that era.
Yep.
And we're talking about teams that at least won a Super Bowl. We're not talking about Minnesota, who went to 4 Super Bowls within the first 11,
Right.
you know, but never won anything. And so, and then obviously the Bills, you know, with their 4 consecutive Super Bowls, you're not a dynasty for me until you win back-to-back somewhere in there.
Absolutely. And so we are near the end of Any Given Sunday on KUAW. Phenomenal show like always, but it gets even better with Penny for Your Thoughts.
Penny for Your Thoughts goes out in celebration of my jersey that I'm wearing tonight, the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and the Negro Leagues in general. When you hear that term Negro Leagues, it's not because it's just one Negro League, the Negro National League. That was the first official charter league here in Kansas City. Next week, when we celebrate Valentine's Day, also remember that on the 13th and the 14th of 1920, Rube Foster and 7 other gentlemen and owners, including our own J.L. Wilkinson of the Kansas City Monarchs, met at the Paseo YMCA, just a stone's throw from where we sit today, and they chartered the Negro National League. And organized black baseball had teeth and substance. They had been playing baseball since before Reconstruction, but now it finally had roots, it had teeth, it had structure through the great Rube Foster and his visionary mindset to want to bring organization and structure to it. And so with that, we want to remind everyone that this month of February, in celebrating Black History Month, the Kansas City Royals have graciously offered to pay the fee for anybody who would like to go and visit the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. And so it's absolutely free for the entire month of February. And so we want to encourage you, please, ma'am, please, sir, go down. If you haven't been to the museum in a long time, please go down. They've upgraded some of the exhibits down there. You want to take opportunity to see how they have updated it. You want to go and experience not just black history, not just baseball history, but American history. The Negro Leagues was very, very important into our country being what it is today and being a forerunner to the civil rights movement. Remember that Jackie Robinson integrated baseball before the military integrated, and Jackie Robinson integrated long before the Jim Crow South did. And so we tip our hat to Negro Leagues baseball, and in particular the museum headed up by our brother Bob Kendrick.
Absolutely. And we are unable to get him this month because he's extremely busy. He's trying to promote the museum, and he will be out of town. So we will try to get him on as soon as we can, but sometime maybe in March. And with that, and celebration of my birthday, which is tomorrow.
Happy birthday!
Yes, thank you. I appreciate
Happy
that.
birthday.
Thank you, Mr. DJ Scatter. I am totally blessed to have this amazing show with amazing people on this on here, and the fact that I have been alive for 58 years, even though it's still a couple of hours away from being official. I do appreciate all the blessings that I get.
What time were you born?
I was born at 5:03 in the morning, but it was in California, so technically in Missouri, it's 3:03. So anyway,
I was going to text you at that official time, but I don't think I will.
just because you won't be asleep or you won't be awake, I get that. So, but absolutely. So anyway, enjoy your weekend. It's Super Bowl weekend. It's Super Bowl Derek Thomas. And with that, I am Brian Kress, the Awesome Voice, with my brother, with another mother, Darwin Penny, Coach 24, and DJ Scatter, George Walker. Be awesome, not angry, and you guys have yourself a Super Bowl Derek Thomas weekend.